And here we are with our third event. We've got Ian and Neil from the Psychedelic Society of Edinburgh, who I think everyone's been to some of their events already, or most people have. So yeah, I mean, intimate audience, but we've got some cameras rolling, so there'll be future people watching on the interwebs. So for the sake of the future people, we've written some questions here, some of which we already asked, an hour or two ago. But so yeah, first, I guess just like introduction. Which one of you is which, and where you guys are from, and how you met, and that kind of stuff.
I'm Neil. I lived in Edinburgh for a few years from the Scottish borders originally. I now live just north of Stirling, a little place called Bridgevalley. Very nice, you should go there. Very pretty in the hills, brilliant. And when I was living in Edinburgh, one of my first jobs when I came to Edinburgh was at a hotel. It got voted Scottish Hotel of the Year in 2012 when Ian and I were both working there. 5-star hotel, very intense atmosphere, lots of money, like silly money for a room a night, full apartments. And Ian and I were the concierge, so we done valet parking. If the guest wants something, we get something, literally anything. Believe me when I say that. It was kind of like the movies for a while. It was ridiculous. So that's where I first met Ian.
Mm-hmm. I'm Edinburgh, born and bred, and we worked together for a couple of years pretty much until our first psychedelic experience. It's all kind of gone on from there. So the timing of it was really good because we heard about the Psychedelic Society starting in London, which was just about a month after this experience, and we've been involved in that ever since. So
yeah. When did the Psychedelic Society start?
So they kicked off in November
2014.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And they had a sold out event in London, at Conway Hall. It was about 400 people, and they had Professor David Nutt being the guest speaker there.
Yeah.
And we went down thinking we would just like to see what it's all about. We're very enthusiastic about this brand new field of stuff to study, and it was a really fascinating topic. So we went down, and we're really blown away by the response. There's hundreds of people in the room from all walks of life as well, and the buzz in the room was amazing, and it got us very inspired. It made us think that this movement is perhaps happening again after all the decades of nothing. And then about a week after that, there was a message going out to say the sister societies would be starting. Anyone across the UK that wanted to do one in their own city was allowed to do that. So we thought Edinburgh has to have one, and so we took it from there and set it up, not knowing what would happen, but it's been amazing since then.
So is this early 2015 or when was this?
Yeah, so that was March. We technically got the group up and running, but we had our launch event in April 2015, so almost 2 years ago this month. And again, it went from us sitting in a room thinking, how cool would it be to get 50 people in a room talking about psychedelics? And we ended up having 500 people turn up to the first event. So this was Professor David Nutt, again, was the guest speaker. He was very kind of him to come up and share his expertise. And we had the really nice swanky hotel in the city centre, which let us use the space as long as we didn't mention the P word too much. It
was quite interesting because the whole idea behind the society for the director of the society in London, Stephen Reed, was to mainstream psychedelics, get it out, push it out to the wider public. To not be afraid of these things. Yeah. So we pulled a couple of strings because having worked in the hotel industry for a few years, we knew a couple of people at the Sheraton Hotel, and it just so happens we knew the girl who was part of events there, and just messaged and just say, listen, this is what we're doing now, and she's like, okay, that's weird, but cool, yeah, I'll help you out.
Yeah.
It was funny because for the event we had Professor Nutt, Katie McLeod, who works for the Scottish Drugs Forum in Glasgow. She's the National Training Officer and works a lot with like novel psychoactive substances and opiate addicts and stuff. She came and spoke, but also Stephen Reed, the director of the Society in London, and it was quite ironic because we had more people in the Edinburgh launch than we did at the London launch.
Oh, really?
And then Edinburgh, there's like 400,000 people or less, and he was just like, "What the hell? There's so many psychonauts in Scotland." And so that was really nice. And people came from miles away. People were coming from up north and stuff. It was quite funny. We had suits on. We got a haircut.
Yeah, it was a proper big event. The next event we did, we expected another 500 people, and there was about 3 people in the room. So yeah, it was a real kind of back down to earth. But it was really nice to have got the ball rolling, and obviously the online presence was so important because that exploded way more than we thought as well. Was the amount of people following on Facebook and sending us messages and all this kind of thing was. I mean, it should really be a full-time job for us. It's a full-on thing. But yeah, still having all these different events, we're trying to be as broad as possible because there is no kind of average psychonaut or someone that's interested in these substances or has experience with them. It literally could be anyone. So we like to try and keep as open as we can to everyone. Yeah.
So what kind of events have you had since then that have had good turnout? What have been some of the bigger events?
Yeah, we've had a couple of film screenings, Neurons to Nirvana, and we done A New Understanding, the Science of Psilocybin. They were really good turnouts.
Boga Nights as well.
Yeah, we screened a Boga Nights by a Scottish filmmaker, David Graham Scott, who was addicted to heroin and overcame it with an opioid and a Boga trip. And that was really powerful. I highly recommend watching that. It's quite disturbing and hard to watch, but a brilliant documentary. He's a wacky guy. And we tried to bring people to these film screenings that wouldn't necessarily read about this type of thing. So my girlfriend's mother is a doctor. Get her along. My dad doesn't even know what LSD is. Get him along. Get as many people along as possible. And then film screenings we had a good relationship with LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and Caroline and Jim Duffy from the Scottish side of LEAP. They came in and done a talk for us. What else we had?
Graham Hancock.
Oh, we had Graham Hancock. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that one, man. Yeah, forgot about that one.
That was a year later. Yeah, that was in March of last year, and again it was 500 people in the Sheraton sellout, and we had about another 200 inquiries about that night. So we could have
went double for that guy. It was insane the amount of people that were.
Yeah, it's crazy. That was Jonathan and I were there for that one.
Really?
It's a bit poetic, you go to London and then we go to Edinburgh, see your event.
That's
our inspiration for
Psychedelic Society. That's amazing. That's cool. It's really nice to hear.
Yeah.
But it was really nice of him to come. We just emailed him on a whim, and he was really into the idea. He obviously had a couple of books to sell, which helped, but that wasn't why he did it. But he was really nice as well. He hung around at the end of the event and shook everyone's hand and got his photo with everyone. Cause
he waited till every single person in line had contact with him, and he had the flu as well. He was feeling awful, like terrible. He almost collapsed at the end. And we've had storytelling events, which for me personally have been what it's all about for me. I think for both of us, on a completely selfish level, it's great just to talk to people that you've never met about your experiences. It's a very cathartic thing to do, and to hear people's experiences. And we've had people come to our storytelling events and sit on the couch with 30, 40 people staring at them who have been through addiction, abuse, war, rape, terrible things, and have used psychedelic medicines to help them, combined with therapy and other things to overcome that. And meeting these people in a room is just heartwarming. They've definitely been my favourite events, and they're not all glitz and speakers and microphones. It's very intimate and powerful.
I think I've been the ones that kind of blown us away because it's nice to be all. We like the original was activism. Really, it's real grassroots. Get out there and do some things. And it was all about policy and trying to get thousands of people together. But it's when you have one person speaking a personal story, it's a lot more special. And again, people are quite reluctant to come up at the start.
We always go first.
Say for 5 minutes, you get to say what you want in front of a group of strangers, but it is a nice space because it's very much, everyone is there for a reason. They've all got shared interest in psychedelics. But yeah, to have people going from being reluctant to speak to at the end, everyone can't wait to come up and say their little thing. It's really, really special. Yeah, it's turned us kind of from quite hardened, activist, policy, science kind of guys into quite kind of soft, a lot more rounded human individual stories. So that's been a good one. Another one we did just one thing about was the Day of Action. So this was the third or fourth event we did. Was on the 20th of September every year. It's National Psilocybin Day across the world. And there's a couple of big groups now that are just starting to educate about the therapeutic aspects of psilocybin, specifically medically. So we did a day on the 20th of September, handing out leaflets about psilocybin to people on the Mound in the middle of Edinburgh.
You were there.
Where we met Jacob, yeah.
Jacob helped out, yeah.
And that was really interesting, yeah. We got a really good response from people, mostly older generation. One lady did tell me that I was going to go to hell. But apart from that, people were actually really, really nice. And again, yeah, it was the older generation that really surprised us. They'd heard about a lot of these substances. And people are a lot more clued up than we thought about this movement that's happening. So that was a nice one, just to engage members of the public and say, have you ever heard about psychedelic therapy or anything like that?
And that's the scary thing, is that, there's people that were around in the 60s and stuff, that were young, that are still alive, obviously. But, as we move forward, if there are no changes to the prohibition, then what we're looking at is all the current living generations of people, that's always been the way it was for them. So it's hard to imagine anything different. There's so many people where it's just like, you're talking to them about something and, it's illegal, so therefore I'm just going to shut down. I'm not going to engage in any conversation whatsoever. You can't talk about changing things because this is the way things are. And that's how a lot of people think, so. But I'm glad that we're starting to move in the other direction and not just, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, basically.
Yeah, I think so.
And for us, also on campus, we know a lot of people now that are studying neuroscience, that are studying psychology, mental health, and are looking at becoming therapists and things like this. So it's important to, like you said, just educate people also, on campus that are not necessarily involved in these fields, but that could be, because it seems like down in London, Imperial, King's College and things, there's a lot of research happening, and this is ultimately going to be, legitimate beneficial research that happens, and it seems like Edinburgh as a university isn't really tapping into this at all, even though it's known as kind of like a research powerhouse university. So long term, how much we'll actually be able to influence that kind of stuff, I don't know, but we did cold call a bunch of people in the psychiatry department. We just printed out a list of all the professors and everybody, and just had all their phone numbers, and we were just going down the list calling people. And that was I guess some people were just like, oh, okay, good luck, bye bye. But some other people were, you kind of hear them going, oh, this is different. So long term, hopefully we can get out there on campus and kind of get the word out a little bit more.
And changing that taboo as well. I'm sure a lot of people that you speak to in the university on a personal level would definitely agree with you. A lot more people than you would realise, but professionally they're maybe not allowed to say that they're involved with these things, or that they can openly talk about them or support them, because people still lose their jobs over this kind of stuff, and it still is a big taboo, and so that's something we need to change. So that's the main thing really, is just changing people's minds about it all. Even being grateful to be in a country like this that we're even allowed to speak about these kind of topics is another thing. There's places in the world where we wouldn't be allowed to do this, and
in Philippines.
Yeah, exactly. We'd all be shot outside.
That's pretty mad.
And so, even though we're still quite backwards in our policy, it's hopefully there's a bit of scope. Things are taking a very long time. But.
And these frameworks are in place. We have the tools that are needed to change people's minds and change policy and things. It just seems like, I tell people all the time, I have nothing against the drug scheduling system as it exists, Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3, et cetera, or A, B, C in this country. The top drugs are supposed to be the ones with little to no medical potential, very high potential for abuse and addiction, physiologically very dangerous. And then from there, you move down and so forth. It just seems like right now what we have is we have a system that makes sense, but the way we've, actually put drugs in these categories is just completely off.
Yeah.
And so what it means is, doing research on these things, because they're Schedule I substances, it's almost impossible. And this is something that Dr. James Rucker talked about. He'll come to the home office and be like, okay, we want to study psilocybin. And they say, well, it's a Schedule I drug. Like, why would you want to study it? And he says, well, we're trying to change this, And they say, well, but it's illegal. It's just kind of, you're not really moving forward.
It's a horrible circle. What we found, something I've tried to implement with my family, is starting on a complete foundation level with people to speak about it. Find a common ground. Like how do you speak to your granny about psychedelics? If she or he is very conservative. And for us, I think, well, for me personally, I've found the end of life anxiety one a very, very powerful argument that 95% of people will agree with. And that 5% just don't have a heart. A new understanding of the science of psilocybin, LSD, mescaline, all of them could potentially help with end-of-life anxiety. If you have a terminal illness, your time is up in X amount of time. And if this illegal, dangerous drug can help that person come to terms with the end of life and stop them from suffering for months and months of anxiety and depression, which will probably make their downward spiral even worse physically. These things can help. I found that a very strong argument, especially with family members and from quite a conservative family. And they'd be like, these things are terrible. I'd be like, right, imagine me with a terminal illness right now. I have a year. I have chronic anxiety or chronic depression. And you're telling me I'm not allowed to ingest something that is going to help my mental, it's going to help my mindset and help me come to terms with my death. I think, most people will agree with you there. I think if we start there and build on that, that's the way forward.
Has it been rather successful, like just kind of speaking with your family or like close friends? Or?
Yeah, 100%. Like when I first started taking psychedelics, I didn't mention it to my parents at all for about a year, and I started the society, and they knew I was busy at this point. I was still living at home, and I was busy calling people and looking up laws and all this weird stuff on my laptop they could see. And they're like, oh, I know something's going on. I was like, well, I'd like to invite you along to an event, the day of that event. So I came along, and then after that, I actually said to them, listen, the reason for doing all this is because having suffered anxiety and know what it's like to have panic attacks, but then to take a psychedelic and the next day, all of that disappeared overnight, within 12 hours, gone. That completely changed things. So going from that point to my father being like, oh my God, you're going to jump out a window, pretty much regurgitating what the Daily Mail has told everyone for the past 40, 50 years, to now calling me and saying, oh, there's a guy called Robin someone on Radio 4 talking about a mushroom study in London, Robin Carter Harris. Yeah. And that's my dad, who's like, he's a proper Scotsman, straight-laced kind of guy. So if you can change someone like that, there's hope,
Yeah.
And you and your mother as well.
Well, yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, part of the movement is this coming out idea, and it kind of shadows a lot of the gay rights movement from the last 20, 30 years, where that was a taboo, illegal activity, so therefore you were a bad person if you did it and all that kind of thing. And it's amazing to see how much that's changed in even in our generation. So one of the events that the Society have done is the Psychedelic Pride, where kind of like a storytelling evening, you can come along and you dip your fist in a pot of neon paint and you put it up just to say I believe in psychedelic research, or I owe a lot of my life to psychedelics, and it's that coming out, and that's the whole part of mainstreaming it, is to say it's not taboo and you're not a weirdo or a freak or on the fringes of society or anything. It's that it's nice, normal people, and
you can study
together,
you can pay taxes, you can hold down a job.
I mean, most of the people that come to our events are normal functioning members of society, you know, the vast majority. And, so this is the whole idea about changing these views, and it's a really big deal, the whole coming out idea, because it then inspires other people to do it as well, and once the ball's rolling, it's okay. So that's a big thing, but it's also just learning how to talk to people about psychedelic movement. As you're saying, it's a lot more beneficial to tell a personal story rather than the whole war on drugs idea can get a wee bit sometimes ramming it down people's throats and saying, rattling off the statistics and everything. And you do get in an argument with people because when people hear an idea for the first time, their first initial impression is to get scared and use fear because they don't understand. So we say more if you kind of just, people see it in your lifestyle rather than what you say. If you're just generally more happier, people go, this happened to me a few times. Someone noticed a few times and said, something's different with you. I can tell, what is it? And you're like, okay, well, and then you can tell them. But you don't have to kind of tell people unless you want to,
Yeah.
So that's been a really interesting part of it as well. It's the coming out,
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay. So that's fine.
I'm thankful that in academia, we still trust people that have, doctor in front of their name, that have PhD in front of their name. If I go online and make a list of all the people that we've been in touch with, and I say, Doctor this and this, from this and this university, from the Institute of Neuropsychology, blah, 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 there's still an element of trust. People can start, with a certain sense of like, okay, whatever this person says has some merit to it, which, might be misguided as well, but it seems like academia, at least for us, is like a big part of the moving force. Like we're using, like professors and researchers and things like this to kind of build this base of, like you said, like we're not some, drug users that are, on the fringes of society or something like this. Is just as, legitimate as any other form of research there is. So it's definitely encouraging for me to be able to say like, look, here's our speaker, he has credentials, like he's researching this for real, we're not making this up, and just kind of like calm people down and get them into the room where then they can learn about these things for the first time. Because a lot of people won't really know a lot about the psychedelic movement or psychedelics in general, but they will have heard things from various sources. So even people in the university, like, I had a guy studying pharmacology who told me that, LSD melts your brain or something like this. And, it's definitely, you have to think how you approach, these people and how you respond to these things. And Jonathan and I were talking about this the other day. Jonathan shared with us an idea of like a way to structure your arguments and things and start by acknowledging something that you agree on and things like this. But for me, it's almost like I don't even want to expend much energy talking to people that are so misguided. Like, of course, I want to, change their mind and show them, what the truth is. But like, I have other things to do almost with some people, So I don't even want to like get too into it and spend energy, like ramming down people's throats and things.
It takes both open-minded parties to both be open, because otherwise you're shouting against the brick wall. And a lot of people don't let facts get in the way of their opinion, and that's a big problem we have to face these days.
You don't want to be too dogmatic either way. Like you also don't want to be too, pro psychedelic dogmatic. Like I don't want to be going out there and you're like really, arguing with people and kind of giving a bad image, because I think most people think that people involved with this are going to be super opinionated. They're going to try to convince you to do drugs and all these things. I'm just kind of, if you don't want to engage in open-minded discussion with me, like that's fine. But we're gonna, be making this information more widely available and things like this.
For me, part of starting the Edinburgh Society was after having a couple of quite profound psychedelic experiences and having benefit me short term and long term. I was that person. I was ran it down the throat. Listen to me, I'm going on the roof naked with a megaphone, covered in paint, like revolution, mushrooms, don't listen to government, all that type of thing. We tried that in the 60s, people tried that a lot, and it didn't work that well, and I don't think that's the way we're going to do it now. We do stand for the whole grassroots thing, but in a more peaceful, scientific way, rather than ram it down people's throats. And I'd done that for a while, and my girlfriend said, well, what are you going to do with this? What are you actually achieving from acting like that, from saying telling people that they're wrong, their views are wrong, and they just need to do mushrooms, then they'll understand. You know, do you realise how you sound? And if you take a step back, you have to think, oh, you know what, yeah, no, I sound like one of these people who I don't want to sound like. And she was like, well, do something. So that was part of the reason starting the society. It wasn't like I told you so, I can do this. But it was a real kick up the butt. And if you can say, I'm telling you all this, but now, like yourselves, I've set up a society at a university, and we have people with PhDs come along and talk about their research. You know, it's not just me. I'm not by myself raving about this. There's now a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it definitely requires a certain degree of patience to have, like, be able to interact with some people who have such a negative stigma towards the topic generally.
100%. Yeah.
I mean, I actually kind of came from the other instance, because you're talking about your parents, and they had like a bit of a conservative view, where I feel like there's also the trend where people who have a recreational kind of perception, where they feel like it's a little too, it's kind of become too much of an activity, and not necessarily there's a like academic, there's a use behind it. I mean, I brought my father to our first event. It's ironic enough.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, just like the different perception and generation, where, you know, them, for instance, the way they perceive it is that it was just kind of an activity. Well, you know, Dr. James Rucker kind of talked about the very specifics, a lot of the science behind it, and just a lot of it's kind of going over his head. But I mean, it's absolutely, you know, a really formative topic.
That's one thing, especially. I mean, with current research, MDMA is a good example. Is used by hundreds of thousands of people every single weekend in nightclubs, for example, in that recreational setting. But is also now being used in the psychiatrist's office, which is incredible. And it's the same thing with LSD, for example. Any recreational use can kind of deter possibly from the scientific field if these substances are associated with partying rather than for therapy. I mean, that was originally, for example, like MDMA has kind of gone from the therapist's office into the nightclubs, and that's
gone from being called empathy to ecstasy. You know, it was known as empathy for years.
But yeah, I mean, even looking at the cannabis model of the last couple of years, it's been very exciting across the world, and even America, who are notoriously more crazy than the UK for many laws and that kind of thing, are kind of being a little bit pioneers with everything, and even the rest of Europe now are kind of on board, at least with the medical side of things. So this is the way it's hopefully looking for psychedelics as well. It will be a medical psychedelics, and then possibly, well, eventually a kind of cognitive liberty idea that if you're an adult, you can do what you want to your own body. But
with your own consciousness.
That's a dangerous idea, though, these days.
Yeah, we were listening to this Ram Dass lecture where he suggested that a government agency be created like the Federal Aviation Agency, where you know, people can, I guess, get licenses to fly, to ascend, and they can come to a government, you know, building or whatever, and be in a good setting with you know, trained personnel, and have these experiences, and then go home again at the end of the day, and you know, it's kept within government control, and you know, the substances are pure and in known dosages and things like this, so it would all be very safe. And he was saying, you know, all of us have, you know, the ability to go fly. We can all go do a pilot's license, but you don't see us jumping into airplanes every day and going and flying. You know, it's much in the same way. And then he was saying that after he had suggested this at one of his lectures, he got a call from a newspaper saying, "Is it true that you suggested the creation of something like the Federal Aviation Agency?" And he said, "Yes," you know, and he gave a statement and everything. And they said, "Okay, well, if that's what you want to tell them, you know, if that's what you want to say." So he was obviously a bit far out for the current media. I guess, what do you guys see as being a kind of like a system that would make sense in the far future?
Well, the society, the London or the UK version of what we do have been running experience weekends for the last over a year, where in Holland, where psilocybin is legal, and you're not viewed as a criminal, for example, there's a lot of people that would like to have this experience. A lot of people are first psychedelic experience, and they want to experience with mushrooms. They just don't want to break the law, and that's a big thing again for people. If you have a criminal record now, you can't travel, you won't get a job, all these extra things that we don't see happening. So they've been taking groups of people after vetting them and whatnot to Holland to have a safe, legal psychedelic experience, and the feedback's been incredible from them. So something like that in the UK would obviously be the goal in the future. Would be government sanctioned centres with trained guides to minimise the potential pitfalls of a trip.
I think trained therapists in the right setting in a sanctioned house or building would definitely be a step in the right direction. And just on a personal point of view, I just can't help thinking, people have been doing these things for thousands of years in the forest, by themselves or with a group, in tribes around the fire, in caves, going out hunting, that type of thing. The whole government building, controlling dosage, that is a step in the right direction, without a doubt. And I think we'll get there eventually. But it's going to take a while, definitely, and it's going to take even longer for the powers that be just to say, you know what, you can't just go to the forest now and just do that. We trust you. We trust you. We trust you to go skydiving. We trust you to go mountain biking, climbing. So we'll trust you with this dangerous activity as well.
But the education needs to be there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're seeing maps now actually training therapists. If you subscribe to the newsletter and stuff, and more therapists are being trained for MDMA therapy. Hopefully, when that becomes legal in this country, as in Britain, I think it'll take longer. We've spoke about independence quite a lot recently, and how that could have an effect on the Scottish drugs policy. Certainly, I think it would have an effect, as in we would get to reschedule, certainly, and start maybe writing different laws for Scotland specifically. If we do want to be a progressive nation, whatever that is nowadays, I would try not to get too involved in politics, but you can't not be and live on the planet, I would certainly think independence would be a positive for Scotland, if anything, so we can start changing drug laws and maybe start bringing a cannabis industry and see what that does to the economy. Look at Colorado, billions. They can't get rid of the cash fast enough. I think it would be a great thing for Scotland. Cafes, the Amsterdam approach, that type of thing.
It is an issue. I mean, we're starting a Glasgow society as well. There's been a lot of interest from Glasgow, also in the Highlands and the borders as well. So the potential there for a Scottish society is enormous. But there is a lot of that resentment that the drug laws are made by people in another country in this modern world. They think it'd be a good idea if we did it ourselves, but it would pave the way for a lot more research and innovation and all that kind of thing. But
David Matt even said that if Scotland was to go independent and it was all above board and Scotland could reschedule and start doing research, you'd probably see quite a lot of scientists and researchers move the research to Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, Inverness, and start doing research in Scotland and become try to become a pioneering country in psychedelic research. And these things are possible. It sounds fairy tale, but when you actually break it down, it wouldn't be that hard.
And there's a lot of potential benefit for the country. I mean, Scotland tops the table of European kind of alcohol use, illegal drug use,
heart attacks,
pretty much most things. Yeah. So any kind of medicinal help that could be brought in, or any harm reduction measures, all these kind of things could always help. I mean, with cannabis, for example, places that tend to legalise it have lower rates of, they see a lot of other hidden benefits that comes from it. So that's hopefully something that we can solve today.
In the States, for example, I think there's now only a few states that haven't legalised medicinal use. I think I'm right in saying that.
Yeah.
In the states that have, they've noticed the past few years like a 25% drop in opioid overdoses. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. And in Scotland, that would be a hell of a lot of people too.
Yeah.
Because heroin use is still very, very high in Scotland.
I'm waiting for ibogaine to make a bigger splash.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like we're doing well with MDMA, PTSD. We're doing well with psilocybin depression. We're doing well with LSD, anti-anxiety, but I don't think there's too much ibogaine, opioid treatment stuff going on right now. And I tell people about it. I say, well, yeah, okay, it gives them this very long, profound psychedelic trip, but then afterwards they have no withdrawal symptoms, which I don't think we have any pharmaceutical drugs that can do that right now. I mean, our solution to someone who has an opioid problem is to give them more opioids that are not as bad, and then they have to get through all of the anti-addiction things themselves, pretty much. Whereas with ibogaine, you have this harrowing psychedelic experience that really, gets the gears turning in your head, and then there's no withdrawal symptoms afterwards. So it's pretty much the best way to quit cold turkey. And of course, you have like people doing this underground, but it's not going to be as successful. It's not going to be as safe. There are deaths that have been reported, but no one knows about it. No one's heard about it.
Sure. Like anecdotally, it's well known in certain circles, but we need the science. Yeah, we need actual articles that prove certain things.
I think there's a clinic in Mexico. There's a ibogaine clinic in Mexico you can actually just go to.
But yeah, you have to kind of prove things rather than just say these days. Again, it's that whole what's the academic side of things is that people will tend to be more interested and be more receptive if it's coming from a published article rather than some weird guy that tells you certain things. So.
Double blind. You guys, scientists love a double blind.
Yeah.
Everything you read, it's double blind. Nice. Like, I'm a gardener, like I didn't go to college or university, and I have a keen interest in this. And from what research I have read and can keep up with, not being too academic, I often see the golden sticker, double blind.
Yeah. Even though when you're giving someone psilocybin, it's quite obvious whether you've received a placebo. It's not like, oh, now do you think you got placebo? And who am I?
The Good Friday experiment, you heard about that one? Yeah, Rick Doblin.
Richard Funk, Walter Funk.
Yeah, they gave, I think there was 12 people, they gave 6 a placebo and 6 psilocybin, and these were all religious people. And they all went to a Good Friday ceremony in a huge cathedral, just to see what would happen. And the 6 that had psilocybin had an experience with a god of some sort, of mystical experience, obviously. But I think 2 or 3 out of the 6 that received the sugar capsule or something had a mystical experience with an entity or something as well. Yeah. It's a good read, the Good Friday experiment.
And it's even consciousness itself is a very hot topic in many disciplines at the moment, but we still don't know what it is essentially. And there's this hard problem of consciousness that they talk about in psychology and whatnot. And psychedelics look like they could provide at least some answers, if not many, into these big questions. And that's why lifting the sanctions on them is such a good idea, because psychology can really do with that injection of new ideas and stuff at the moment. And if we have a tool that prevents us, then it's bad for everyone, really. So we need to make it okay to study these things again. That would be the most interesting thing, because at the moment it's very, very hard. There's so many legal loopholes if you want to study psilocybin or LSD. I mean, the UK have had a couple of really good articles in the last couple of years, but they still had to do enormous work with red tape in the government and whatnot. So.
Yeah, James Rucker told us that they got a grant from the government to do this research, and they spent most of it getting through all the bureaucracy and all the red tape and all the pathways you need to do in order to work with the Schedule 1 drugs. So they only used, you know, a tiny bit of what they got to actually do the real study.
They had to buy like, you know, point something over gram of psilocybin,
Yeah.
you know, state psilocybin, like thousands and
Yeah.
just go up the Pentland Hills and grab a couple of liberties, you know.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, you see in the New Understanding documentary, you know, they're going into the back room and they have this huge safe and they're, you know, turning. They can take out the little psilocybin bottle. I'm just like, what are you guys
Drop it.
doing? Like,
Yeah.
Kill us all.
yeah, but MAPS, I mean, they're trying to buy 1 kilogram of pharmaceutical grade MDMA, right?
Made in Newcastle.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's was it $400,000? I think it was.
Yeah. It's quite cheap, I
I think
In bulk.
when I was at, in 2015, when I was at Breaking Convention, I went to see Rick Doblin speak, and he said after his London trip, he was heading north up to Newcastle to see where it was being made. And people were just making jokes like, yeah, you're gonna have a great time. You know? Have fun up there.
Yeah. So you want to talk about Breaking Convention, because we haven't been there, but of course we've been told that we should go.
I mean, wow. Have you been?
I haven't been. No.
No. You guys been? Breaking Convention? It happens every 2 years. There's been, I think this year's the 4th one. They claim it's the biggest psychedelic conference in the world. It must be close.
Europe's.
Yeah, it's the same in Europe. I think maybe Psychedelic Science might have been bigger this year.
Right. That's true, yeah. But it goes from the science to the art, to history, to policy, harm reduction. It covers, it's over 3 days at Greenwich University in London. And I went down in 2015, and you can apply to volunteer. Mainly because I was broke, you get a free ticket if you volunteer. So yeah, I went down there and volunteered, and the buzz around the place is incredible. It's unlike anything I've experienced. Everyone's there. Obviously, it's nice to be in a place where everyone agrees with you. You know, great for the ego. You know, I'm right, and so we're all just really right here, correct? Yeah. But just seeing people like myself, you know, not from an academic background at all, just have a real passion for this subject and the way it can help people, to meeting people like David Nichols, who's just insanely intelligent, people like Rick Doblin, Anne Shulgin, stuff like that. These people are just wandering around giving lectures, and they're attending lectures that PhD students are doing on psilocybin and how it can help smoking addiction, you know, which is a beautiful thing, because quite often we hold these people up on pedestals and think, oh, they know everything, but the great thing there is they're there to learn as well, and learn from, you know, people in their 20s like yourself who are doing their PhDs and seeing what new research is coming through. So it's great, and you meet people from all over the world, and parties are really weird. Like, it's just ridiculous. The first time I took DMT was down in London, which is brilliant. And this year it's in June, and Ian and I are volunteering. Jacob's going. Not volunteering, you're just kicking back. And I think there's a group of 7 of us. We've got an Airbnb near the location.
Nice.
Highly recommend it. Try and get a ticket. You can get student tickets, early bird tickets. Learn so much.
Yeah, proper, as you said, because it's so broad, you've got the kind of more arty spectrum with healers and the more esoteric arts, as scientists would call it, and then you've also got the neuroscience and all the latest data. So it's really good, because some conferences can be kind of one or the other, and it can kind of put some people off as well, and because it's such a broad topic. It is about bringing everyone together from all these walks of life, and that is why it's so good. One aspect, as you said, is kind of the echo chamber idea, where everyone pats each other on the back and stuff. So one thing to take from that is how to approach other people in your life who are not into the idea, and how do you engage them. So that's the big part of it, is to bring in outsiders, really, and kind of initiate people into what it is. Yeah. But it's a great way for people to get together, show that there's some professional, normal people there who really care about all this kind of stuff.
And if you've ever got a talk or research that you want to present, you can apply with a paper, whether that's on neuroscience or art, or one of my friends down there had done shamanism in the UK. She presented a talk, so it's a great way to get your research out there. If you're struggling to get funding or anything,
And it was Ben Cecil, wasn't it? Who's organised it.
He's one of the founders.
Ben, we're hopefully getting him to Edinburgh actually at the end of the year for a talk. He's been doing MDMA therapy in the UK for many years, and it's kind of leading that field. So
Yeah.
it's really good.
Yeah, we watched the TED talk at one point a couple.
Yeah, it's
months
really
ago,
good. It's
yeah.
really engaging with that. It's a kind of how to talk to other people about MDMA. He presents it really well. Yeah. Saw him give that talk in Holland, and it was really well received. He's just knows how to speak to people on that level as well. So yeah, it's an important thing, but it's a, for want of a better word, it's a groovy time at the moment for the whole thing. We've all seen this graph of the amount of research that was done in the 60s and then a complete silence. Obviously there was a lot of underground work, but now to have thousands of articles being published again, and it's hopefully it continues. But
I think it's genuinely in countries' interest to pursue this research. I mean, if you look at what the U.S. government is funding, these PTSD trials, like the amount of money that they're spending on disability payments to the veterans, who have debilitating PTSD and can't even leave the house, it's only in your interest to develop, treatments for this. So, yeah, I mean, it's completely in the U.S. government's interest to fund, MDMA research and things like this, at least in my opinion.
Even from a tax point of view, from a conservative
Purely financial
point of view.
perspective.
Yeah, of course. Even if you don't agree with the implications, as McKenna would say, but it's just a good thing to agree with that. Yeah, and we're also seeing it in the news as well now. Talking about mainstream, we're seeing Vice and Rolling Stone, Time Magazine, Business Insider, all publishing articles on the latest things. Silicon Valley's got a huge. Obviously, it's been connected with LSD or microdosing for many years, but that's becoming again more open, and people are saying it's been going on for years, and we wouldn't have maybe possibly the internet, or we certainly wouldn't have iPhones or anything without maybe a little bit of pharmaceutical help. So and we see, was it Isla Waldman came out recently as a mother and a writer. I think it was her, the Washington Times or whatnot. She was posting that she's microdosed throughout her career in the last 5-10 years, and she's a parent and a successful, businesswoman and all this kind of thing. So it's bringing that.
Her book comes out. I'm not sure why it's called it. It's A Very Good Day, I think it's called. She's from California, I think. Sounds really interesting.
But yeah, that's another idea, is the whole microdosing thing. It's a big resurgence recently, and needs studied. It needs scientific papers on if it works or whatnot.
Yeah, and one of the first things I noticed when I started working at this internship was just the amount of coffee that these guys consume. Like the working world really is, a world driven by the drug caffeine. And, when you start to think about it, I'm sure that, the caffeine molecule has boosted our total human productivity, by a very significant amount. And once you start thinking about, drugs as tools, and, they can have uses, they can have dangers, it really kind of opens up, a new way of thinking, I guess.
Well, especially with stuff like Cricket Watson, the DNA molecule was famously linked to their use of LSD, amongst many others as well. But it's what inventions could we gain from all this? There's treasures of untold wonder to come out from the things that we can invent with possibly the help of psychedelics. That people haven't even envisioned yet. Possibly the next breakthrough is consciousness or physics or anything. It's really going to be. We all owe it to ourselves to study it more. But
there was I keep talking about this Ram Dass lecture, but it was I really enjoyed it. There was a few. He alluded to the idea that he might have been part of some telepathic experiences under heavy doses of LSD. He gave 3 little anecdotal stories about that, and he said, he kind of pushed them away because those are the things you don't like to think about. But yeah, I mean, once you consider how little we really know about our own minds, both from a neuroscience point of view, from a psychology point of view, people like to think that we're this super advanced, civilization that has all these technologies and all these capabilities, but really, I mean, if you go back 100 years, things were very different. Like we just started. So I definitely, mirror your sentiment that we have a lot to do in the future. So yeah, what do you guys see as kind of the future path? I mean, is it through getting all the research locked down, getting medicines put out there, or do you see like a bigger grassroots movement happening before that?
I think it has to be. It can't be one or the other. It has to be both. But a community built between both. You need to build solid bridges between grassroots movements, societies like ours, and societies like yours. You need to have people like us speaking with politicians and lawmakers and police officers and medicine experts. You need everyone working together rather than just, because I think for some people, even if you hit them with all the science and all the studies, some people just get bored of it. They're just like, okay, cool, study, and you start hitting them with stats, and even if all these are really important, it's blatantly obvious that psychedelics are beneficial. Some people just won't care, they're just like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing my own thing, in my own little bubble, my own little echo chamber. So I think we need a partnership between grassroots movements and research, definitely, in order for a real change and a real revolution, I think.
Yeah, we want 2 sides to help each other rather than conflict, because there are some scientific-minded people in this field who would not like to maybe see that the grassroots movement, perhaps, or that hippie side of things, because it possibly detracts from the hard science. And the same way, some people on the other side of the spectrum don't like the word medicine, for example. James Jessel talked about it recently, that it implies that something's wrong with you. And for a lot of people, they say nothing's wrong with you, and psychedelics can maybe make you see that there's nothing wrong with you in the first place. And so the idea of medicine and science is the opposite of what they think. So as long as dialogue is present and we can talk on a rational adult level, then we hope people can see each other's point of view and help each other out. But,
we attended a meeting in Glasgow last month, the month before, and it was hosted by the recovery community who are recovering from addiction, heroin, mainly alcohol as well. And LEAP were there, and Anyone's Child, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Anyone's Child, great organisation started up a few years back actually, in Britain and the States now, and it's family members coming out against prohibition, family members who have lost loved ones because of drugs. So a mum speaks about how she lost her daughter, 15-year-old daughter, because her daughter took, however many micrograms of MDMA, complete overdose, because she just didn't know what it was and didn't weigh it, didn't test it, and she realised that she's open-minded enough to realise that prohibition, that's because of prohibition, So it was in Glasgow, and it was great for lots of communities to be there from different backgrounds. And we attended, we knew a couple of people there, and I did bring up psychedelics, obviously, and I did ask the panel, their thoughts on psychedelics, and studies have shown, and anecdotal evidence has shown that psychedelics can help people come off heroin and stuff like that. And it wasn't, the question wasn't shoved aside, but it wasn't spoken about a lot. And then there was a gentleman there who said, well, we have to watch about all coming together, because the recovery community might not agree with the psychedelic community. The psychedelic community might not necessarily agree with law enforcement against prohibition, but I think we can all agree on the one thing we can all agree on, that the war on drugs and prohibition hasn't worked, and we need to go from there. That's a common, we spoke about this common ground earlier. That's a thing we can agree on. Whatever the end goals, we can maybe decide those when we get there, whether it's therapy centres, whether we all just go out into the woods, take our clothes off and eat mushrooms. We'll see. But start on this common ground, start on this.
So that's another good example of people to listen to, as you say, like coming from a doctor or scientist, people are more inclined to be receptive and believe them for a start. But one was, the parents of children who have died from illegal drug use, is not many people are going to argue with that. The other one is law enforcement against prohibition. Jim, who spoke at one of our events, was the head of Strathclyde Police for 20 years in Scotland, and his whole career was locking up drug dealers. And he since retired and came out and said, I didn't make any difference. The drugs are still there, and this is from a policeman. And so when the police are telling you that things need to change, more people are inclined to listen, because it takes a lot of courage to come out, especially in that field, and say, talk about your views,
So moving forward, having all these communities come together, I think, in a room and just start discussions. It's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, certainly from the policy is one side, but as you say, the grassroots needs to happen. You need to have people physically at events, and whether it's marching or protesting or anything like that, it does make a big difference. We had the nitrous oxide ban just before the psychoactive substances ban last year. And people, I don't know if you saw it, outside Westminster, and everyone was inhaling nitrous oxide balloons. That was really good. It got a lot of media coverage. And I don't think anyone died that day, did they?
No, hundreds. Daily Mail. Hundreds. Yeah.
They're all now addicted, of course, but certainly, that was a really good event. But that was certainly more of the grassroots side of things.
See, for us, like, we have to limit ourselves a little bit.
We don't really have that much of a choice. Speak to you both about it.
Yeah.
You do have guidelines, obviously, being a university society.
Yeah, I mean, so when we applied, obviously we had to convince them that we're not, a drug distribution ring. We're not we're not trying to host, drug taking sessions or anything like this. And, it seems that they've believed us so far, but what it means for, the kind of, things we've become involved with, at least for the time being, I'm wary of getting too involved politically in anything.
It's understandable.
Just because, the potential for getting into trouble. I mean, I'd love to be more active on the social front in terms of, protests or marches or what have you. But, we're under the umbrella of the Edinburgh University Students Association, so we do have to kind of hold ourselves to certain activities and certain types of lectures and things like this.
I think we've even had to limit the amount of activities. Like, we initially even thought that we could do maybe testing kits, for instance, but we realized that might encourage people to bring a lot of drugs to events.
Sure.
So there are things like that we had to kind of limit ourselves in doing.
Yeah, harm reduction. I mean, I'd love to be doing more harm reduction. I'd feel terrible if one of our members or even just someone in the university, had a very harmful experience or God forbid died as a result of something that we could have maybe, educated them a little bit more, or we'd love to do, like testing, making testing kits available, and things like that.
And I think, is it Newcastle University or Manchester University have taken quite positive steps in that direction. I'm not sure if they hand out kits now, but there was certainly talk. You could maybe get in touch with the societies down there that are doing that.
Yeah.
It's the same with the pill testing across some big festivals this year, even more festivals this year.
Yeah.
It's pill testing, and that's, again, it's a grey area, because it's people saying we're doing it regardless of if it's legal or not. It is saving lives.
Yeah.
and it happens in many countries across Europe that you can get your pills tested, for example. It's a no-brainer now. People need to wake up to this fact that it's just admitting that people are going to do the drugs anyway.
Yeah.
You can't tell them not to do it. So if they're going to do it anyway, how can we reduce the harm? But the harm reduction thing is something we've discovered as well. Obviously, we don't condone any illegal activity officially, and we don't get involved in any of that. People at our events don't come to buy or sell illegal substances. But again, it's something people need to realise, because they hear Psychedelic Society and think it's a big party or a big ceremony or something, which is not. But I mean, we've had people contact us saying, how much should I take before I come to one of your events? God, no, I don't. Absolutely don't take any psychedelics to come to our events. Yeah. But yeah, we can't answer these questions. We get contacted now almost daily by people from all walks of life saying, you know, for example, I've got PTSD and I've got cluster headaches. This is a couple of people come forward and say, how much psilocybin should I take? Well, we can't tell them, you know.
But you can send them
anecdotally, I could hint towards something, but legally, the answer is don't do mushrooms. They're illegal, you know. But these people are in a lot of pain, and you know, certainly some of these studies are showing, especially treatment resistant. You can have treatment resistant depression, treatment resistant. This is the people who are at the end of the line, and we're the only people they can ask for advice on this kind of thing. That's not our place, and it should be certainly a government's role is to advise on this kind of thing. But we get asked most days, where can I find stuff, or is this ketamine pure? Should I take it tonight mixed with this antidepressant? And this is something we're absolutely not allowed to talk about. So we need to put more pressure on people to say, let's do this, you know. But that kind of open space where people can talk about this stuff is, because we've had nights where people will ask, what exactly is MDMA? And someone else will say, well, it's this molecule and it lasts for this time, and people start bouncing ideas off each other, and that's really nice, and it's safe to talk about these things because it's the free speech thing, but you don't want to get into too much trouble about all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, for some of our members, you know, they'll be learning. Yeah, you know, so many of them are chemists, many of them are pharmacology students and things like this. So yeah, we've heard these discussions as well. We had a pharmacology student and a medicine student who were just going off each other, and just bouncing ideas off each other. And I was just sitting there just learning, you know, really, because I mean, I know, you know, what certain, you know, I know like what LSD stands for and things like this, but it doesn't mean I know very much about how it actually works and these things. So yeah, it's refreshing to have kind of people that really do know quite a lot about these things. I'm sure we'll find some at your pub quiz later tonight.
Pub quiz. That's nice. Gross market. Psychedelic pub quiz. Psychedelic related. All the questions.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, hopefully we'll get a good crowd. I think what you mentioned about the guidelines you're under, this is why having a talk like this is good, because any ideas you do have that you don't think you could act on because of certain rules and guidelines. I'm not saying use and abuse us, but you know, send them our way, certainly, and we can work off each other like that. We are still officially under the banner of the Psychedelic Society UK. Things are changing slowly, in the fact that, you know, Glasgow's going to start up soon. We are considering a Psychedelic Society of Scotland umbrella, and then have sister societies, rather than not being told what to do, but having our own certain constraints from London, and sort of mimics the political situation in a way, which is quite ironic, I find. But we don't have much to do with even the director, Stephen reads an odd email here and there about email addresses and things like that. And I feel that we are now our own society. It's now its own animal, and it almost, especially online, you find you get to a certain number of views and likes on their Facebook page, it starts to snowball, and it runs itself, because every time someone clicks, it spreads a message to all of those people who have clicked, they like that, etc., etc. So certainly
But yeah, a bit more autonomy, I suppose. Being a non-profit organisation, not having any kind of powers that we tell us what you can and can't do, it's a little bit more freeing. But you have pros and cons to the whole thing, which is why it's good to build that relationship between both things, right? Because there's been enough fighting and people not talking about these things for so many years. It's nice to just share ideas, and it's the people that make the society. It sounds really cliche and twee to say that, but it really is the people that make it, that turn up and come along and who are now friends with each other because of meeting through the society, which is an amazing thing to see. And it's for other people to realise that they can do it too. That no one's special. Even your idols and stuff, they're all just humans, and that's what it takes, is people just to be a bit more vocal about all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it is changing. You'd be surprised how many people you influence without you knowing. People maybe from 5 years ago would say all psychedelics are just dangerous, you should do them, to even now people go, oh well, there is a little bit of scope here, so that's enough. We just sow some seeds and let them germinate in people's minds.
Yeah, for us, this challenge is, we're technically office bearers of the society, and we could, continue to do these roles next year, but we're, over the long term, you're going to need to always be having fresh people running the society, basically. People are only here for a certain number of years at university. My hopes for the future long term are just that we can find enough people that have the passion, have the interest, and
just sustainability.
I mean, we'll still be here for a few years, but it's possible that societies die and things like this. But I think that we'll make it as long as we find fresh blood.
Yeah, I'm sure absolutely as well. There'll be, as we discovered, a lot more people than you think that are into these ideas, and as soon as you come forward, it helps other people come forward as well. So yeah, it's really good, and it is inspiring. I've said it a lot of times, especially at such a prestigious place like Edinburgh. You would expect would be a little bit more backwards or conservative, or however you want to call it. But it just shows that things are happening.
Do we want to open up to questions now? Does anybody have any questions they want to ask?
I wonder when you said about how you approach it with different people, you can almost term war on drugs as a bit slippery. A lot of people around you say, well, I know loads of people who do drugs, and nobody ever really, for use, goes to prison who people know. So do you think almost that term is it means nothing really? It doesn't have a great ground in it.
For me, I think being more specific about the substance is important.
Yeah.
Even though heroin and cannabis are in the same class, most people know that they're not on the same level. So when people talk about a war on drugs, it's mostly cannabis, or we hear a lot about heroin and cocaine, for example, the crack epidemics and meth and all this stuff. We often feel like we're this poor, maligned hippie crowd in the corner going, well, what about psychedelics? It really is, because all the horror stories you hear are mostly, they're not addictive, and you're not going to. Chances are you're not going to sell your possessions and become a criminal to fund your habit, and all these kind of things that we hear don't really come in with the psychedelics. Really, it's very niche.
I think the term war on drugs, I agree with you. It's something we should probably start moving away from. When you look at the deaths globally, especially in Mexico, it's just insane. Tens of thousands of people, and we should probably start saying, thousands of people in Mexico have died because of the war on drugs. Instead, say, because of these laws that are in place in this country, or because of prohibition, the word prohibition, I don't know, start changing that. Because of laws in place that are made in this country, are made at the UN, or made in America, people in other countries are suffering. Same with the whole thing, the war on terror. So it's a war on a noun, which in itself doesn't make sense. So, by saying war on terror, or even calling someone a terrorist to a certain point, is that fueling hatred, or fueling fear? Certainly, war, the word fear, and with fear comes, hatred. Hatred comes violence. think Yoda said that. So
He's a great guru, you know.
he
Yeah.
probably too much. But yeah, I certainly agree with him.
It's an interesting perspective saying it's law because laws change, but with wars it's like it never ends. Does it? It's, too abstract.
Yeah, it was George Orwell said wars are not meant to be won; they're designed to be continuous. Or they are.
Yeah, it is a euphemism.
That's the thing. Well, Jim from the ex-policeman say this war on drugs has been going on for 50 years. Drugs are cheaper than they've ever been, and they're more readily available than they've ever been, and they're stronger than they've ever been. And so there's kind of, in a nutshell, showing that it doesn't work. The language is very important. That we use a big one for me is the term alcohol and drugs. You hear a lot of it. You hear it every single day. Alcohol and drugs. And the majority of people need to know that alcohol is a drug, and a particularly dangerous one. I would stick the knife in there and say that too. But yeah, it's alcohol and other drugs. We're starting to hear a little bit more in organisations that really care about that. And even that word "other" changes the whole perspective to say alcohol and drugs. Even there's so many organisations, the Alcohol and Drugs Foundation, the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership. It's the language is very important there. So.
Yeah, I mean, as undergraduates at the university, we're often witness to quite a spectacle of alcohol abuse. But of course, those people aren't drug users. No.
Yeah, this is
you're drinking until you black out, and it's not a bad drug experience you've had. You're just
it's like a hilarious hashtag in Snapchat.
Yeah. It's like when people wake up with hangovers and they have a sense of pride. It's just like, what are we really doing to our bodies here? Like, what are we really normalizing? I guess it's already normalized and things like this. But
well, yeah. I mean, Dr. Carl Hart, I think, he said that the hangover is your body's it's a physical withdrawal symptom already from a toxic, dangerous drug. But you don't talk about that the next day. It's just a hangover. It's just seen as a thing. But it's the same with possibly drinking coffee in the morning, which is seen as so normal here. I mean, you're taking a stimulant drug every morning. If you had a line of cocaine every morning, society would look at you differently, or your peers would certainly think there was a problem.
That's what colour your skin is.
Potentially, but
Cocaine.
but yeah, it's
depends where you
getting
work as well.
in public cycle.
I had an interesting one recently. I'm getting married next year, and our wedding is going to be my girlfriend's house, our parents' house. And I said, one day I would like to be in a situation, I'm not going to get married twice, hopefully, but I'd like to attend a wedding in the UK or in Scotland where there's bottles of wine on the table and a jar of weed as well, because you get that in countries now, in the US, California, you go to someone's wedding, there's a big bowl of OJ Kush or something, and there's a lovely Merlot, why not?
It's normalizing.
It's normalizing it, and I so wish by next year it would be legalized. It's just not going to happen. Because I would be like, say to my grandparents, do you want a wine or do you want me to roll you a split? Yeah. And people would be like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh, no. But it's legal,
It's like, even if you change booze or drink to drugs, and you say, I hear you moved into a new house, I got you some drugs. And it's like a nice bottle of wine or a bottle of whiskey. That is what you're giving them, is drugs. But even drugs is such a loaded word, doesn't that just get everyone's fear going up as soon as you hear it,
Yeah.
Brought you some drugs, or it's incredible, I took drugs with my parents last night. We had a glass of wine with dinner. It's like, really,
Oh, I don't do drugs. It's like, oh, do you have coffee this morning?
You see these things, I don't do drugs, starter kits. And it's like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, cigarette, coffee in the morning, pint at night.
But yeah, people are more aware of that now, so hopefully it'll change.
There's something actually I've been curious about recently. There was a topic that Graham Hancock actually mentioned about kind of psychedelic tourism. How like Amsterdam or the Amazon or even the Southwest of the United States, about traveling to these places and experiencing either ayahuasca or even peyote. Did you have any interaction with those type of people, or people who've gone on those type of trips, or do you know anything about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
we've had a lot of our members travel to South America, for example, and go under, from 2-day to 6-month retreats and come back.
Nowadays it's so close to home, you don't have to go far. As in, you don't have to leave Scotland for an ayahuasca ceremony. Certainly, if you do a bit of research and talk to some people, you certainly can find medicine circles, without a doubt. I think there's positives and negatives to medicine circles. Here, certainly. I attended a retreat last year in the Netherlands called Psychedelic, which is it's like you take paganum harmaline seeds and then take mushrooms, and it's a really, really powerful psilocybin experience, really powerful. And some people that have taken it have compared it and said it was stronger than the ayahuasca ceremonies. And I spoke to someone there, I spoke to the leader there, the guy who was facilitating it, and he was saying, in Europe and the UK, you're seeing a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies happen, and they're on the increase. They're starting to people become aware of them, come on people's radars. And the problem that he said he has, and now I think I do agree with him, that by doing ayahuasca over here, you're taking that bark certainly, and often it is flown from the Amazon over here. People order it online and it's flown. It's using jet fuel and air miles and carbon footprint to come over here to then consume it, and for a lot of people to then reconnect with their nature, their mother goddess, tell them to look after the planet. And that's quite ironic that that ayahuasca has flown and used jet fuel, and I've never thought of it that way before.
As well. I mean, it can take decades to grow with purity buttons as well. Takes long to grow.
And his argument was the mushroom. You can grow it on your windowsill. You can create it anywhere. You can go out to the hills, and if you do consume it with other certain substances, paganum harmaline seeds, certainly, you can have just as profound, if not more profound, experience. I found that to be a very, very interesting argument and view on it, because quite often there's a common theme. And for me, certainly, I've always loved nature. I think everyone loves nature at a primal level. But you hear about a lot of people after their first psychedelic experience not eating meat, or becoming vegan, or starting gardening, or start planting trees, or get in touch with that side of things. And there is an irony there that it takes something to be flown from a sacred place.
And that's probably one of the worst things about the current cannabis legalization is the hydroponics. The indoor growing needs so much high intensity light and so much energy that it's actually quite an energy intensive industry. Which, energy itself isn't, we could be generating it with renewable energy, but that's probably one of the most harmful things about the cannabis industry.
Considering it's such a hardy plant that grows, all over the world as well. So it's tough. And there's a few people who are maybe not into that idea because some of these plants have never seen sunlight, and so it's a strange thing. But to go back to the tourism thing, obviously there was a couple of horror stories this year. I'm sure you heard about with some bad couple died in an ayahuasca ceremony in Brazil. Tourists.
More and more you get in people not doing the research, and then more and more people realize that they can make a lot of money by faking it as a shaman.
There's a lot
but it's sexual assault as well. It's becoming increasingly more common.
And we do tend to hear a lot more about the horror stories than positive stories. I mean, they're taking this right. It's the same with Erowid and your sites online. You tend to read more about the car crash stories, and everyone loves a bad trip, and people don't tend to care, or it's not as interesting to hear about someone having a profound experience and just having a good life after that. It's pretty dull. So we do hear about that, and obviously, I mean, the tourism is happening primarily because of prohibition, I would imagine, and so that's another unforeseen problem for making things illegal, is that you are going to get charlatans that take it, and it's going to potentially push the movement back 10, 20, 30 years as well if we have ayahuasca ayahuasca equals danger or death or abuse or something. It's,
It only takes like one promising, usually white person to die, as they did in the Netherlands, and they'll just maybe outlaw mushrooms because it was one French student who jumped off the bridge and did it.
Yeah.
and so we've said at our events a few times when we felt really that there's something happening here is please no one ruin this, you know. We
Yeah,
just
so
need one
true,
person
yeah.
to have a shower, you know, and
You gotta watch as well with movements so often, or you see especially with left-wing movements, they so easily get coerced and then fracture, and that's it. There's nothing. Yeah.
Definitely.
I think obviously, well, the internet's such an amazing tool for connecting people, and hopefully if the internet stays quite neutral and free, then people will have a lot of benefit from that. But that's been one thing, is the amount of people share stories and even recipes and stuff like that. Like Shelvin's books are online forever. I mean, the recipes to make these drugs will always be around, so people are always going to do it. And so, as long as the internet doesn't get shut down, then we should be okay.
Do we have any questions for you?
Massive crowd as well.
Anyone up for that?
Right, well, I think we'll wrap it up there then. It's been definitely over an hour. So, yeah, it's been good talking to you guys. I'm sure we'll speak to you later tonight.
Thank you very much.
It's good having you all here.
With
From the pub quiz.
the Beehive Inn, Grass Market, upstairs through the magic curtain.
Yeah.
They're
the only place that didn't hang up the phone on us as well.
Oh, really?
That's another thing that we found is
real confidence sector.
yeah, so we've had a lot of that when we conditioned events. Really, there's a lot. People just don't want to be associated with that.
They just don't want to risk it.
Yeah. Which is the irony, because we're trying to make it so that it's not something that you have to be keep in the dark. But yeah, something to bear in mind when you're booking something. Maybe something that you don't have the same problem with if it's the you.
Well, I just tank through it. I just call people up and say, "Hey, I'm from the Psychedelic Society. I need these, microphones. I need these, because I after a certain point, we're a society, like, you have to cooperate with us, So it is nice to have that, that force behind you where, if somebody gives you trouble, you just call up the society's office or whatever, and you say, "Hey, look, this guy's not doing what he's supposed to." So yeah, in that way, it's nice to have the support of the university for sure. But,
Yeah, there's a few. I won't name them, but there's a few specific places in Edinburgh which I was disappointed with. A few places that claim to be progressive and at the forefront of medicine and research, let's say, and they're like, "No, we can't do that." No. It's a shame. It's a real shame. It's fear. It's the main thing.
Positive for the future, certainly.
it'll take time. So our next event is April 5th. We're having Mark Miller, the neuroscientist, who I actually met through a meditation session that he was hosting. I'm not exactly sure what he'll be talking about, but I think he'll be talking about neuroplasticity and how it's actually possible to literally change your mind, and kind of fighting this idea that when you get older, your mind kind of just tapers off. And new research is proving that no, that's not true. If you do regular meditation and regular things like this, you can actually keep your neuroplasticity fairly high. So I think that's what his research is about. But we'll see, and it'll be good. So yeah.
And then any more events planned, or do you have a break for a while? Or?
Yeah, well, the university, April is mostly, we get 2 weeks of vacation, and then in May it's all exams, so that'll be probably the last big event. We'll still have socials and things, but yeah, that's pretty much us for the year until September, I think. So.
We'll plod on.
We'll do something.
Yeah.
You guys have all the summer events. I got them pondered.
Yeah. The medals.
Yeah, hopefully. We've been approached by it.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's good.
Like a few festivals approached us and said, "Do you want to do a stall and that kind of thing?" Maybe handing out some leaflets and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty cool. We got asked to do a psytrance night as well last year, which was brand new to both of us. But yeah, to go and do a little talk there before the club started, it was
Really?
it was a really enlightening experience actually. Yeah, handing out leaflets to people and stuff. Because,
Be safe, everyone, but have a great time.
that was enlightening for me. This is my first time at a psytrance gig, and yeah, it was alright.
Was that in Edinburgh?
It was, yeah.
Which club was it?
Studio 54.
Okay.
So we've been back a few times since, and it's yeah, it was really nice to see that side of the psychedelic community that I hadn't known about.
It's been going on for
It's been
so
going
long.
on for a long time, yeah. It's a little bit more kind of underground and that, but it's phenomenal. But yeah, I was blown away with how nice everyone was to each other and connected, and no trouble at all night, from growing up and being in alcohol-fueled nightclubs for thousands of times. It's it's a really interesting idea. So.
Not to keep it too long, but one thing I do see happening is in the coming years, groups of people getting together and creating their own ceremonies, but no shamans or no licensed shamans or I am this and the spirit talks through me, that type of thing. Just generic human beings with an interest in psychedelics, and we've seen it. We've been part of it. And I think that will grow, and numbers will grow. I think you'll see places being rented, areas, houses, remote places being rented to have gatherings, but take it away from the healing side of things and the medicine, just to go to these places and have mind exploration evenings. Have certain rituals you can do, some drumming, some dancing, meditation, things like that. But creating a I hate myself for using the word, but creating a new age ceremony type idea, because quite often, like I say, people have been using these things for thousands of years. But by that, I don't mean we should be using them the same as those people, because times have changed a lot, and we've changed, like people don't have to eat meat now, and we don't have to live in caves and kill animals and wear their fur, and we don't have to do things the old way. We can start taking these substances, these things from the earth, and creating our own culture and our own ceremonies based on what we know now about them. I see that happening in the coming years, and I think I know a lot of people that would be very, very interested in that type of thing.
I think that's one of the problems with the movement is so many people go, no, you can't use that drug like that, this is a sacred drug, and what does that mean?
I 100% agree with that.
Or this is, you cannot do, pharma ayahuasca, you shouldn't use those compounds, or you can't use that outside of, certain selective South American clearings, and you think that's ludicrous.
And that it goes against the whole ideology of the psychedelic movement.
Exactly.
Opening someone's mind. Well, that's a completely closed idea.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. One for me certainly is MDMA, and using MDMA in a ceremonial sense, as in not taking it and then going out dancing, but taking it with a group of friends and incorporating massage, not a non-sensual sexual massage, incorporate speaking, maintaining eye contact, and asking each other quite prominent questions that you would struggle to answer while sober. I think that's something that could blow up definitely, because there's so many people that are scared of psychedelics because they'll fry their brain, or they're scared of what they'll see. But when you take MDMA at the right dosage, it's really hard to have a bad time. I'm sure you'll vouch for this. The brain chemistry, it's almost impossible to actually feel any anxiety. And I think that's something that
just like life, everyone's different. So celebrate those differences. We've had heated debates sometimes with our members that say, LSD is only good for a nightclub. And I heard people say, I can't think of that's the last place I'd like to be. Most people would not like that, but everyone's different, and therefore there you go.
And some people are like, I would never take MDMA by myself and listen to Pavarotti in the bath. And some people are like, well, that's the only way I do it, so is there another way? Just thought I'd add that.
I thought the study they did in the church, I thought if the Anglican Church ever wanted to witness a revival, it would be if they during the sermons you had the incense and then they passed with the bread instead of the bread it was the acid. I would think it would be it would be incredibly profound. I mean,
this
you
is
go in those cathedrals and
people argue that a lot of major religions are based on the psychedelic experience, either directly or very similar. If you have a mystical experience, it can be very similar. So
it switches people's morality as well. I think you touched on it before. People are welcoming much more so than in a normal club and side chance one. But I think Anglican Church, they should really do.
We could do with the number of maybe.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Right, well, I think we'll have a round of applause for these guys.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah.